I mean, this all started just because I was researching the life of the Unabomber because he had he had an interesting childhood and got MK ultured by the CIA, and how trauma can nurture you into kind of becoming a bad person, and how we can put measures in place to prevent that from happening. And but yeah, I've started reading his manifestos and books and stuff. He's still pumping out letters and books from prison, and I'm gonna have a debate with a primitivist soon. But so this is good debate prep for that. Cooldog's gonna be kind of devil's advocate, but also using stuff he's researched. And yeah, my position is basically that you can want an anti-tech revolution that takes us back to the Middle Ages, but basically there's no guarantee that an industrial revolution won't happen again, and that it won't be more catastrophic to the environment and catastrophic to people's suffering, trying to have that industrial revolution again. So it's better to reform or even have a socialist revolution, but just to change to renewable energy gradually, and find more worker democracy where people have more of a say in autonomy in their in what they pursue in their passions. But yeah, to not take this route of uncertainty in having an anti-tech revolution, and yeah, not knowing where that ends up. That's me. Cooldog.
All right, cool. So this is an interesting point that goes sort of more from a pragmatic angle. But before I tackle that specifically, which I promise I will, I do want to outline sort of the motivation, which is perhaps absurd on the face, for the negative position that I'm holding. And I want to make it clear that this is not my actual position in real life. I don't want to. My real position is not to go back to medieval level technology. So I want to make that clear, but I'll give it the best effort. So I just wanted to make that clear for the audience. But anyway, so the major motivations for going to a more primitive level of technology first comes from an understanding, and I think that you kind of pointed out part of it, is that current modern technology seems to convert everything to a mere resource. Everything is converted into a quantified number that is used in order to maximize some other quantified variable. I mean, look at all the natural, and I'm sure my opponent would maybe tend to agree a little bit on this, talking about environmental collapse. But we view all of these environmental resources as just what we can process and get out of them. And so I think that that's a sort of a very bad approach to looking at tools and other such things as mere sort of resource. Sorry, I have a fly buzzing. The second motivation for this is that modern technology has come in to mediate everything that we do. There's nothing that's like authentically human anymore. Even such basic needs such as like romantic relationships are mediated by the dating profile. In food production, right? You're no longer you just go to the store, and even now you can get stuff mailed to you, so you don't even have to go anywhere at this point. And even the things, and the vegans will be happy with me here. Even things like industrialized farming, they have GPS tractors now. I've been in one, and the driver doesn't even drive the thing; it drives itself. And so there's not an authentic sort of human relationship to things anymore. Everything is mediated, and we're all always alienated. And when we go back to medieval technology, where you're sort of living by your own hands, it's a more authentic way of living. So that's a motivation. Um, we could talk about pseudo activities if we wanted to, since you're interested in the Unabomber. My major example for that is like social media. It's a meaningless activity that we just engage in, feel good about ourselves, has nothing to do with our own survival or being substantial way. And then the fourth point is, if we look at these types of meaningless technological activities that we do, and we pair it with like the first point, which is the converting everything to a quantified value, we see that modern technology has made it such that everything has been quantified in the realm of human behavior, from work relations to how many stupid fucking likes you get on Instagram for going out to the bar with your friends. And I'll close the positive case before answering your point with a quote from Steve Jobs, or as Walt pointed out, that other fuck, whoever took over, which is, quote, talking about the Apple Watch. We don't create products that people want, but things that they don't know they want yet. And so modern technology fosters in this sense of discontentment where it's always more, 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 more. And modern technology has no bounds. Whereas in medieval technology, there is sort of a bounded relationship, and there is that human component to it. Now, addressing your specific point, which is like a practical point, is that some type of revolution back to the Middle Ages will then could incur. There's no guarantee that we won't go back to it. In fact, I think this is a relatively strong point, right? Because once
Mhm.
you've sort of opened Pandora's box, you can't put it back in, and there's always going to be incentive to cheat with modern technology to make your life easier. And so
Mhm.
you're arguing, I think, perhaps correctly to a certain extent, that there would be another revolution that would cause even more dramatic environmental destruction, which is like an extinction level argument. And so we have to deal with that. And my response to it is that we don't necessarily have to do a night and day revolution. We don't have to, you know, send nuclear bombs and blow up all the
Mhm.
power plants, right? This can be sort of a gradual weaning off of the addictive allure of this modern technology, right? We can slowly, degrowth is an idea. Like we can,
Mhm.
slowly sort of re like
Mhm.
rediscover the way of being in an unmediated relationship to nature is sort of the idea. And that takes time, right? You can't
Mhm.
quitting cold turkey is not the best way to quit smoking, right? So with that, I think we can start the back and forth, but I think that's a very interesting point you brought up.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. Yeah. So just like any, even like advocating, like uh, to to get more autonomy and like control over our lives back in like a more authentic way. There's lots of concepts we can use to limit social alienation. Like one thing is the concept of minimum viable use. So like when you're wanting to write a letter, when you're wanting to write to someone, you could write them a letter instead. Or if you're starting work on a project, you don't need to bring your iPhone out, which has like lots of notifications that can distract you, and you can just like write on a typewriter or something, or write on a key on a little keyboard that doesn't have anything else to do with it. Um, so yeah, so any like direction, any revolution regressive back towards no technology, I would just say like it might be beneficial in our personal lives to use less technology when we don't need to use a lot of technology. Um, in some instances, but there would never come a point where I wouldn't want like assembly lines for like penicillin or to make like innocent items like reading glasses and seeing glasses for people that can't see very well. So yeah, I just don't see like, and as well like anyone, the people that kind of really value this like degrowth and hunter gatherer lifestyle, it's kind of a selfish thing. Like you're saying we're gonna have a revolution away and we're gonna like desert the cities and we're gonna desert modern technology, but then you are like you're choosing not to engage in like in helping people. Like you're choosing to live like like a quiet good life away from society, but you're not you're not contributing to the health system. You're not contributing to making sure that we're all like work together. And I just don't see that as like a good society to move to. And I don't think you'll ever get like a movement of people.
Mhm.
um you don't think you'll ever inspire a big movement of people to do that.
Yeah, so I think this is shaping up to be a relatively good and focused sort of clash here of
Mm-hmm.
ideas. So on the autonomy point, well, I mean, I'm agreeing with you. I do think minimizing technology in the place of alternatives certainly the way to go. But I think when we start looking at the ultimate, like what's ultimately behind this idea that we should write physical letters, which I agree with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I write in cursive and old style as well, so I like that more personal touch of the handwritten letter, right? I
Mm-hmm.
definitely think people in the audience agree that there's a personal touch there. But like, what's the idea behind that? Is that the impersonal nature of technology is the bad thing that's going on there, right? It's like the tools that the farmer uses are personal to them. They maintain them, they make them, they know the guy who made them, etc. And it's that industrialization, that lack of personality, that discreteness, that binary ones and zeros that are the email, which is like the root of the problem, right? And so, while I agree that that's like a start, if we stop there, it's a band-aid fix to a larger sort of problem. Now, I think probably the best point that
Mm-hmm.
is going to be the hardest point is this medical technology point,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you're like, how in the hell am I allowing people to die on the street from preventable diseases, right? Like that's obviously the point. And so, I think again, we're discovering this desire of this discontentment of modern technology, of trying to push back the natural ends and natural cycle of being human. And essentially, modern medical technology takes the view that we should live forever, essentially. And it's a profound discontentment with the natural progression of the way that things are. And additionally, right, notice that in modern medical technology, the human element doesn't really exist. It's this cold scientific view. When we look back at like medieval medicine and, from both East and West, there was more of a holistic understanding. There's a spiritual element, there was like a karmic element as well, in certain traditions, and a more holistic understanding of health, spiritual as well as impacted in that. It, it seems to be a little bit more, um, I hate to use the word authentic, but it isn't as cold, rationalistic, and isn't discontent with your fate, which is what
Mm-hmm.
modern technology sort of breeds. And then, lastly, on your last point, which is like you want to dissolve cities, but going out and living Ted Kaczynski hermit cabin is bad. You aren't helping people. I agree, and I don't think that the approach to go live out in the middle of nowhere is the right approach. I think that you have to work in society and with society against the fundamental evils that constitute society. So you have to be in there helping people, and it's not going to be a revolutionary idea. It's going to be, as you gave the example of using alternatives, you have to show people these different ways of being, and it happens, it's a gradual change over time. And I'm certainly not advocating for a complete rejection of society, in my view. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I'll hand it back to
Okay.
you.
Cool. Yeah. I've heard people, primitivists on that side of the spectrum, saying things like they wish they didn't know that how the rain worked, like how clouds work, because
Mhm.
they like the idea of like being able to do a dance and rain coming and
Right.
imagining, but but that's kind of like an entertainment argument for like desiring that culture can be like shaped by these very like simple narratives,
Mhm.
but in actuality, it's just an argument for ignorance. It's an argument that like ignorance is a virtue in some way, that like, and I don't so you're appealing to like authenticity, and I don't think authenticity is a relatively new concept. It used to be like sincerity, like, and that's kind of um that's kind of the primitivist thing, is like, um we need to get back to this traditional hunter-gatherer lifestyle, and like the sincerity with which you will be motivated to do tasks and to help your small tribe will be like is like the most important thing to human nature or something. But I just think like we're talking about social alienation, and that's not the problem. Like authenticity is not the problem. That's not sincerity is not the problem with social alienation. Like with doctors, we can find we can find being part of like a worker-owned business, or being part of like a universal healthcare system. Like we can go to work every day and we can feel as long as that thing is properly funded by people, like we can feel empowered in controlling the risk of a business, and finding autonomy in that. So there's lots of ways of understanding social alienation. The things like Ted Kaczynski's power process isn't very well rated in terms of like sociology. Like it's like there's better understandings of social alienation. Like in some respects, Marx's labor theory of value is much more respected. And like so like if you run a business and you understand the risks, then you're more like you're not just like kowtowing to a boss and like feeling resentment of the boss. You're feeling like a deeper emotional level of like wanting to help your workmates out and help, and so feeling pride in your job, and feeling like a sense of solidarity and community with your coworkers that you wouldn't feel in like a more hierarchical labor exploitative job. So I think we can move towards those things, but we don't need to move towards destroying all technology. And I think, to say that we need to move to ancient medicine is like a argument for ignorance as a virtue.
Yeah, and so I take in good faith your argument that to a certain extent, like this ignorance is virtue point, but there's like an entertainment argument for the rain dance, and I'm not here to say that there isn't a pleasure gained from these types of rituals, and I guess you call it entertainment charitably, and that's certainly true. But on the other hand, it is sort of the human way. It's the uniquely human way of sort of making sense of things that are truly beyond sort of your conception, right? Like even the greatest scientists are just filled with wonder at like the universe, and this is sort of the more how to say, it's closer to like an original way of viewing the world that is deeper than a mere brain dance, right? Like this is sort of ingrained in like it bonds people together in a cultural fabric. It's not just mere spectacle, right? But on the other points, right, that you're making beyond the entertainment aspect is so you're giving us this worker owned cooperatives. Socialism is a way of finding autonomy and these types of things. Well, still within all of these paradigms, right, within sort of this modern technological ideology, we'll call it pejoratively, right, it is still this idea of production being paramount. And there is still there the reduction of the tree to being what the as resource for the worker owned cobbler to make into a cobbler's a what shoemaker, right? To make into the soul of a shoe, right? There is still that mere resource, and socialism versus capitalism is just an argument about what's the best way to do the bastard reduction of nature into resource, right? It doesn't solve the ultimate viciousness, I'll say, of the modern technological view of nature and the world. And so, other ideas when you bring up like a national healthcare system, this is just like even more like you've abstracted yet another level beyond the local community into this like national identity. And how the hell me living in from I grew up in buttfuck Kentucky, by the way, middle of
Mhm.
nowhere. um and it's like how the hell am I in any way related to these California liberals is beyond my comprehension, or these New York socialites beyond my comprehension. There's no real connection between us. And so when you're talking about like nationalizing a healthcare system, it's like that's at the expense of localized understandings and a local community. And above all this,
Mhm.
right? Above all this, on the city's point, which we haven't really addressed as much, you've addressed it, but I haven't, is like
Mhm.
humans were not meant to live in cities and sit at their desk all day. Humans weren't meant to do that. We're not meant to be rats in a cave. That's not
Mhm.
the way. We're supposed to be more spread out. We're not meant to live in cities. Like there's
Mhm.
tons of diseases that the sedentary lifestyle that cities foster like show, right? And
Mhm.
so I think that like being more spread out, being more rural, being more in tune with the way that you subsist and survive gives not only much more satisfaction, but is closer to maybe incorrectly saying the telos of being human, right? The purpose of being human. It's closer to that way of
Mhm.
being from which we've come from Mother Earth, right? As opposed
Mhm.
to these skyscrapers where we sit around all day, right?
Yeah. Okay. So I think socialism versus capitalism is an important distinction, and I think socialism has more capability um to be in tune with like protecting the environment. So like animals can have like a labor. We can project onto animals that we want to protect, or we want to protect wild habitat, because they are finding a use value in their in the environment. Like they're occupying territory, and they're keeping the ecosystem alive. So they're kind of laboring in a way and making use of their environment, and we can, for our own virtue, we can choose to respect that. And so that's the meaning. So they are deriving well-being from expressing their capabilities in wild habitat. We derive meaning in a different way, because once we've reached this level of intelligence, um, we want to improve on like the humble jungle shack, and we want to um, sorry, my laptop's just about to go off. I need to plug
Are
it
you
in.
good?
1 second.
I can tackle this one if you want. You can go back and forth. We could finish the socialism capitalism stuff if you think that would be a good idea, and then move on to the other stuff. If you want to stay on that train or not. So you're talking about how we can improve on the humble jungle hut.
Brief intermission. Back. Well, yeah. So yeah, you're appealing to that we've done something for a long time in our evolution. Like we were nomadic hunter-gatherers for a few million years, and that's an argument for, because we've done something for a long time, that creates like a rigid psychology
Mhm.
that we can only find well-being in that situation. But I disagree, because bonobos and chimpanzees are two closest biological relatives, closest in DNA. They have like radically different social structures, and I don't think that can clear, like, if you were like tracing evolution back from like, oh, at least for us, for like back to like squirrel kind of primates. There's long periods of time when we're like transitioning from like squirrel to bigger ape to chimpanzee and human. But then there's like a very short period of time where chimpanzees and bonobos are choosing different social structures, and that shows that it's not quite to do with them like developing a new physical capability and that shaping how they form social structures. It's more to do with their brains developing only very slightly, but like in a way that gives them the ability of theory of mind, which is like a Pandora's box of
Mhm.
capabilities. But it's still very minute changes in capabilities that we choose, and the social structures we choose. So like with theory of mind, we can understand like what a person is thinking, and change our behavior accordingly. So it creates like a cultural evolution. It creates like a social evolution. And so just because we've done this hunter-gatherer thing for a long time, we would have been practicing lots of different kind of social structures in that time, and our brains would have been like geared to understanding lots of social relationships. And then when we start to have these technological ages and revolutions, we can adapt to that because we have learned to form social contracts with each other in varying ways, and understanding how that affects our emotions and stuff.
Mhm.
So you're appealing to this age being like the one true authenticity, and I'm saying
Right.
even if we experience more suffering in this age on like a pain pleasure very low level sense, we can experience more happy flourishing, more self-actualizing in the modern age, where we're able to express more capabilities.
Yeah. So I do want to tackle this like socialism versus capitalism point because I
Hmm.
think we both agree that capitalism is kind of trash, correct? And
Yeah,
that it's causing, I mean, we can, rant and rave for hours about how it's caused like and may perhaps even inevitably caused global environmental collapse and the whole terrible rat race and all that other stuff, right? Um,
definitely that um definitely that it needs like change and collapse in order to like efficiency, in order like it needs to keep creating products, and that in that way it's not perfectly aligned with environmental protection. Like we have
right.
to put in regulation to do that,
Sure,
like
sure, and I think
socialist
we
values.
both it like the reason why the socialism versus capitalism argument is really important for your side is because it's kind of like your alternative solution to like the problems that we face, correct?
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And I just take the opposite approach, right? In many regards, right? And I think like the problem that I have with this socialism idea in response to this is
Hmm.
that it hasn't really discharged any of the fundamental assumptions that have made capitalism so bad to start with. And like the like look at the language that we're like using that you use when you talked about animals, right? And I want to argue this is not a capitalistic language, it's a technological language that you're using, right?
Hmm.
Is you're saying, look, we can find use value in the animals for protecting the environment. They do some type of labor in doing what animals do, right? And
Hmm.
this, I think, is like a technological way of viewing the animal as opposed to the spirit of the field, right? It has a metaphysical and spiritual connotation to where the animal is more than just the labor that it does. Its
Hmm.
usefulness isn't even a question, right? It just is what it is. And there's a beauty in that. It's letting nature be nature. When with your
Hmm.
socialism alternative, you're falling into the same trap of capitalism with a different paint job, right? And
Hmm.
you haven't really changed. Like the fundamental problem is this reduction of the sacred, the beautiful, nature itself
Yeah.
into mere use value or whatever the hell,
Hmm.
right? And that's the major problem that's led us into this mess is that coal is viewed as merely instead of being like whatever, right? Just what it is. It's
Hmm.
a use to make power. Like that's the fundamental problem that got us into this, right? Now
Hmm.
we can tackle the evolution point next, but if you have rebuttal to that, we can stay on the socialism point, and
Sure.
then maybe like put it to bed and then go back to the evolution point if that's reasonable.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, the whole, um, I mean, I'm not treating animals as like we need to form a social contract with them where their only value is the way that they're laboring with their habitat. Like the beauty, like we have poetry, like we still have poetry in the modern world, like we can still like see a sunrise and like see our position as being very small in comparison to the planets, and getting like a sense of like well-being from these kind of experiences. And I like, so like the appeal of like spirit of like you can only find spirituality in primitivism, or you need to get back to this fundamental space of not treating animals in this way. All I'm saying is not useful. Like all I'm saying with animals is that like we want some kind of small cities in order to have like manufacturing bases to produce things like penicillin, which is a massively useful good thing in people's lives. And in order to draw like a line in the sand, like I'm not saying it's like this rational contract between us and animals. I'm just saying, in order for us to feel good about ourselves, to find some virtue in ourselves, we need to draw lines in the sand. And we can have this like ecocentrist philosophy of caring about where wild habitats can sustain life, and to what degree can different habitats best sustain lots of animal life with well-being. And to do that, in the process of doing that, we can draw like lines in the sand in desert habitats where not much biological life can be sustained, not much sentient life can be sustained. We can decide to put cities in those locations for the maximum benefit of humans who do suffer and like do feel like a sense of like pain and upset with other humans that they wouldn't go to the small amount of effort in if they have the knowledge to producing things like medicine and producing things that bring us lots of well-being. So
but here, I know you're at least by your voice, you're from Europe, so you may not be familiar with what I call the American magic pill mentality, which
No.
is my ass itches a little funny, have to go to the doctor, get magic pill for it. My kid acts up, gotta give him the ADD meds. The American
Okay.
magic pill mentality, right?
Yeah.
And so when you mention, there's 2 points I want to make before handing it back. So when you mention to help people suffer, right? When did we decide that suffering isn't part of life? Like, when did we become so that even if we're slightly uncomfortable, thinking about my mom a little bit, is like if the temperature is 2 degrees over what she likes, she's hot, right? Sorry, mom, I love you. But you know,
Yeah.
when did we decide that like every like infection that we have, we have to treat with these drugs? Why isn't suffering part of life? Why don't we embrace um you know, the maybe the wrong word, but like the beautiful brutality that is nature and life on this planet, right? Like, why are we so caught up in minimizing suffering when maybe that suffering is what makes us human after all, thinking of Nietzsche, right? The second sort of point that I want to make was that it seems like now you're coming more on my side when we start talking about having these manufacturing bases, and we don't want these like economic service industry type cities, right? Or these like entertainment cities like Nashville, Tennessee, where I went to college, right? Ridiculous. People drinking on Sunday morning. Frankly, disgusting. But to quote Grandmaster Ben Feingold. But yeah, and like my point is like it seems like that we're in large scale agreement that the rat race of the city life is terrible, right? And so my point is, why don't we just go even one more step, right? Why don't we be even more local than that? Right? If that's the movement that we're going, what's your hesitation on going the next extra step?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. What was the first point you're saying?
So the first point was the American magic pill mentality,
Yeah,
and why isn't suffering something to be embraced?
right. Yeah, I mean, but even there, you're acknowledging, like, like, so you're saying, yeah, pain and yeah, definitely. Um, so yeah, we can say that like there's certain aspects to our society that that uh that get leave us like placated and like looking for uh trying to like refine our situation so minutely that we're like more domesticated and like
Mhm.
um yeah and like we can point to ways that like problems or people doing this for specific reasons like say Fox News, like they want to start like a culture war over like people saying Merry Christmas instead of or Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas, or like the Dr. Seuss
Yeah.
books or something. So we can point to specific actors using these like things of distracting us from the real issues in life. But but yeah, we should try to avoid like caring about things like that. Um, but my but modern society gives people the option to go out and live in cabins in the woods in wildlife habitat and risk getting eaten by bears if they want to. But your future world doesn't give people the option to live with modern technology if they want to. So um, yeah, I think Ted Kinsey says that primitive man can handle the trials of like primitive life, like bear
Right.
attacks and stuff stoically. But then why cannot modern man handle the trials of modern life stoically
Right.
in order to get the good stuff of like medicine and seeing glasses? Because I definitely agree that we should be like caring more about like happy flourishing than pain and pleasure, but we do find meaning in self actualizing
Mhm.
in pursuing these technical tasks. Uh, so that is more important to us than pain and suffering. Like I can even agree that some aspects of modern society are frustrating. Like reading a philosophy textbook can be frustrating at times, but
Yes.
it's
Very.
more yeah, but it's more important. But like we accept that kind of suffering in order to achieve those technical tasks that we enjoy doing, that some people enjoy doing, and that should be an option available to people.
Yeah. But this is like and then we need to so let's finish this up, and then
Hmm.
I'll talk about your good evolution point, and then I'll probably move to close because going
Hmm.
for like 40 minutes. I don't want this to go
No.
and because then we'll start circling, I think.
Hmm.
Kind of running out of things to say.
That's fine.
Um, but but
Yeah.
so like you say why not give people the choice for doing modern technology. This is going back to something I said kind of at the very start of the debate, is that the modern technology is addictive and it changes
Hmm.
the way that you think about the world. Prime example, I bike everywhere. I don't own a car,
Hmm.
right? And so because drivers and where I live just suck balls, I ride on the sidewalk a lot, right?
Hmm.
And I've noted that younger people typically they walk in zigzag line because their face is stuck in the phone,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
This is very true. Observe yourself.
Yeah.
Very dangerous, very dangerous. But,
Yeah.
and then they'll look
Well,
at me like I'm bald.
even when driving, some people as well.
Yeah,
It's exactly.
yeah, I play that game too. But I've been hit 3 times in the span of 1.5 years here. Terrible. But
Yeah.
but anyway, the point is, right, is why are these people looking at the stupid phone? And I think we both agree that some of these
Hmm.
social media platforms specifically make their platform kind of addictive, right?
Hmm.
More than kinda, right?
Yeah.
So this is like giving an adolescent the ability to do cocaine, but saying,
Hmm.
you have the choice not to, right? And it's like,
Hmm.
why are you giving people the option of staring into the stupid screen to see what Jim down the street did on his day off when
Mm,
you can admire God's beautiful sunshine? Like,
mm,
why? What is the value of this addictive? garbage,
Mhm.
right? And so that's like my refutation to that line is like,
Mm.
sure, like options are good, but like when one of the options is terrible and addictive, we
Mm.
make that illegal.
Mm.
Right, and so that's kind of my point on that. We can you can have a response.
Yeah, I might be in favor of like very like strong psychological paternalism in that in terms of
Mhm,
kids, in like that like mean like a local level people could vote that their kids only have like phones that don't have like specific apps that are just meant to um like take all their attention away from like the meaning in life and studying
mhm.
and happiness and stuff. Like there was an app that there's apps that are just like that are just made to get you to pressure your parents into paying for new upgrades and things like that, and that's just like it's just yeah, it's not good. It's definitely not good for poor people, and it's definitely not good for people in general. Yeah, I don't know, but like we don't need we don't need to go back to the Stone Age to solve these problems. We can just put in regulation to do whatever to form whatever social contracts people want to form in terms of governance, and
Mhm.
not letting not letting people's consent be manufactured by technology.
Yeah, I think I'll rest here and appeal
Hmm.
to the audience at this point. So
Huh.
do you want to talk about the evolutionary aspect? I have notes. So
Hmm.
you
Yeah, yeah.
started if you would like to go again on that to refresh my memory even.
Yeah, just that there's so many fascinating things to like there's a divide in the sciences between evolutionary psychology and folk psychological
Mhm.
concepts psychology, and there's research now that's showing that animals are using folk psychological concepts at much like lower development than even we thought they might be doing. So like primates are passing like the mirror test, so they're having like theory of mind in terms of like understanding that another monkey is has its own belief systems and has its own like theories about um what it's thinking independent of you, like they're not just like one collective blob of like biological instincts. They're individual persons understanding that each other have beliefs, and that brings with it its own like cultural evolution on top of biological evolution,
Mhm.
and we can see that that now that what the primates have the capabilities to have these cultural evolutions, that they are they're capable. Bonobos are capable of choosing one social structure, and chimpanzees are capable of choosing one other social structure for their environment. And so if they could be doing that so far back in our evolution, then we can definitely be doing that with modern technology.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that like what you're really pointing towards is my position is trying to make an ought out of an is, right?
Mm.
Specifically historically, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I will say that I do not really have the expertise to meaningfully talk about you in the details of the evolutionary psychology and that stuff.
Hmm.
But what I will say is evolution doesn't move that quickly, and it's only been from the evolutionary cosmic perspective, if you will,
Hmm.
to relatively recently that we started living in cities. And
Hmm.
I mean, I think we have a lot to blame from the biology that was in a more primitive way of being for a lot of the disastrous health effects now of the sedentary lifestyle. I mean, the fact that you can order food to your doorstep, which is ridiculous. I never would have thought that as a kid, right? That you can order food from whatever these subscription boxes are, right?
Hmm.
That we have such levels of like obesity, that we have people having I don't know the exact, but they have like bone problems and things like that
Hmm.
from being constant heart problems from being constantly sedentary, right?
mm,
And this is just, I think, physical evidence to show that we weren't built to live in the environment that we built for ourselves, right? And I think
mm,
that on your psychological point, this is a little bit harder because you are correct. Culture changes and evolves. I've seen it in my
mm,
life, in fact, my relatively short lifetime. Not an old timer yet, but
mm,
so that's definitely true. But I'd
mm,
have to think about that more,
mm,
the cultural psychological evolution there and the role that like environment plays in the way that you behave in
mm,
respect to this topic. And so
mhm.
I'll probably end up having to concede that point and appeal to the audience that on balance, I think I'm still winning.
That's good.
Uh,
Yeah, like I definitely like acknowledge that we are dealing with the biological capabilities that we had back in when we were hunter gatherers. Like we haven't evolved our biological capabilities that fast. But I would say like like we've been living with fire for like millions of years, and the kind of social structures surrounding us living with fire and our socially evolutionary adaptations for that. I think the difference. I think the social differences of from from that to like before fire are are in like the kind of like a similar leap to from fire to technology because because it would have taken like like us like developing these biological capabilities to handle the stresses of like large social gatherings um with uh with fire and like tribes, like large tribes, as opposed to small tribes of like chimpanzees or whatever. And yeah, whatever stresses whatever cultural evolutionary stresses have happened since then, we are still capable of dealing with it. Like we can say that we should be like running more. We should like because that was what was beneficial to our health back then, and that wouldn't have changed very fast. So we should create more green spaces for people to be able to run around in and feel mentally balanced in. Um, but yeah, we don't need to go back to Stone Age for that.
mhm. Well, I kind of we've been doing this for like 15 minutes. I kind of
Mm-hmm.
moved to go to closing statements if that's
Mm-hmm.
good.
Yeah,
Unless you have
definitely.
other points that you want to bring up
No, that's it. That's
in the
good.
Discord. So who wants to
Mm.
go first? Who wants to go
Yeah, you can go first if you like. 'Cause I went
Yeah,
first.
sure. So, friends, colleagues, gentlewomen and gentlemen, I come to you as the madman with the lantern in the street and in the city center, saying to you that we live in a sick society. And to quote Marcuse, what are we to make of the insane man in the in the insane society? Is not the sane person who lives in complete obliviousness to God's wonderful creation around them, with their head stuck in their phone, checking how many likes they got on the on their photoshopped Instagram, right? You can't even look at your own face anymore without technological mediation. Is that sane person not in some sense insane? Is it not in some sense a betrayal of what it means to be human in an unmediated existence, both towards nature and to your own survival? And I think that this point alone is enough to at least give one pause, and to maybe reel back the absurdity of the claim, going back to a more primitive relationship to each other and to nature might be not only beneficial, but might also allow one to be their real self. And furthermore, recapping some points from the debate, I really do believe that if, like my opponent, you are someone who thinks that we're in a society where capitalism has run amok to a point to where environmental collapse is imminent, I do believe that you have to look at the root of what has caused this, and it isn't just the idea of making money, but is the technological ideology that reduces nature and even by our own volition ourselves to mere quantified resource, to mere use value, etc., that has led us down this insane path into a sort of a doomed society. And I don't think that such band-aid fixes, such as socialism or other such ideas, are the real solution when in fact we have lived for thousands of years without such problems in a previous way of living. And so that's my major appeal. I would like to thank everybody listening. And we had a very great discussion with my opponent. It was a pleasure on my end, a pleasure talking to all of you. My opponent, especially, is very pleasurable debate. I really did enjoy it. And so, with that, I appeal to your vote and your sensibilities. So, with that, I rest my case. QED.
Cool. Amazing. That was a great speech. Yeah, I was just looking over my notes now. One thing we didn't get to was like what level of violence is it acceptable to use to bring about this anti-tech revolution? And like if we look at history, like the amount of like primitivists in the world, these are people that like are just like reactionaries to the new next technological age, and they're very small in number. So even if they were trying to like take down the electricity grids and stuff, they would have to use very severe violence in their like very small number to have any effect, and so it would take the form of terrorism. And I don't see them inspiring enough people to get to do that. And yeah, like we've gone over evolution. In order to achieve the aims that people, techno-skeptical people, want to achieve in their like feeling alienated from society and stuff, I think socialist movements are a much stronger base for that, because we do care about the environment, we do care about animals finding use value in their wildlife habitats, and we can, and as a planet, we're like, the more advanced we get, the lower birth rates we have, and the more we can like free wildlife habitats up for rewilding and like reintroducing predators and stuff, and creating these beautiful landscapes, and we can live in harmony with the earth if we just advocate this eco-socialist perspective on the world. And yeah, that's it.